What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. I've recently completed all of my 2025 rookie drafts across all of my leagues, and I had two leagues specifically that I felt like I wanted to share with you guys, talk about the strategies in which I used those draft picks, the trades that I made, just break down entirely how those leagues rookie drafts went. And I had two very specific leagues in mind because one of them is a full-blown rebuild and the other one is a full-blown contender. So two very different strategies. I asked you guys in the Discord if you wanted them in the same video or if you wanted them in different videos. You guys said you wanted two separate in-depth videos about them. So today we're going to be talking about that contending roster and how I use those picks to strengthen this contending team to hopefully repeat a championship here this year. So if this is your first time at the channel and you don't want to miss that future video when we talk about the rebuilding roster, make sure you hit the subscribe button. But without wasting any more time, let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about this rookie draft. All right, so I've talked a little bit about this league before. If you guys have been around the channel, it's called the Gambler's Garage. We're going into our fourth year as a league here this year in the 2025 season. So it's not necessarily a super old league, but it isn't new either. It's been around for a little while. This is a league that I created with some high school friends. I used to play basketball with a lot of these friends actually in high school, and so they wanted to start a dynasty league. This is one of their first dynasty leagues that they got into. It was the second dynasty league that I ever got into, and so yeah, that's kind of how this league started. Now, I've actually documented this league before here on the channel. We've made a couple of videos about it before. I did a video on the bdge Dynasty channel last year showing you guys how I use those rookie picks in 2023 and in 2024. So this will kind of be the continuation of that video where I showed you those. I'm going to show you it here this year. And I also did a video on this channel showing some trades that I made in this league specifically a couple months back. So there's definitely been some context to this on the channel already. If you want to check those out, you guys saw the thumbnails there on the side of the screen. However, just to give you a little context about the roster right now, this is a team that was a one-year punt at the startup, and I turned it into a full-fledged contender in about 12 months. So my overall record in this league is 55-29. That's a 65% win rate. A lot of those losses got accumulated in that first year when we were punting, so we've been winning a lot of games since then over the last 3 years. We've been to back-to-back championships in 2023 and in 2024. Unfortunately, we were not able to win in 2023, but we did win it in 2024. So we are going to be trying to defend that championship here in 2025. And once I show you guys the team and the moves that we made, you guys can kind of be the judge as to whether or not you think we are going to be able to defend that title. But just to give you guys some league context as well as far as the settings and the scoring settings for the trades and some of the other stuff that we talk about today, this is also a 10-team league. So it's not a 12-team, it's a 10-team league. It's super flex, full PPR. It's a half-point tight end premium in this league. We also have 6-point passing touchdowns, and league median is active in this league. So we play an extra game every week against the league median. That's why that record being 55-29 despite only having the league around for about 4 years. That's why you guys see that record so high. So we play that extra game every week against the median. It's also worth noting too that these are 40-man rosters, very deep benches, start 10 type of league, but I think there's like 24 bench spots and 6 taxis, so that makes it 40-man total. We did that because we wanted to incentivize trading. Basically, there is nobody on the waiver wire. You have to take really deep dart throws on the waiver wire, and the only other way to improve the team is by drafting rookies in the rookie draft and or trading. So it was to incentivize trades, and it's worked a little bit because this league is very active in the trade market. So I said I was going to show you guys the team. I'm kind of going to break it down for you. I pulled this up. I'm using a resource called Dynasty Daddy to get the screenshot, but I kind of cropped it and made it different for you guys so you guys could see it a little bit better. But overall, you see that contending tier that they've classified us as. We are technically a super team according to Dynasty Daddy. Average age is 24 years old. We're really strong pretty much all around the board. It says we're weak at quarterback and tight end, but you guys see the roster here. We got guys like Jalen Hurts, JJ McCarthy, Jared Goff, and Dak Prescott as the quarterbacks on our roster. Some of the key pieces at the running back position are guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Chuba Hubbard, Brian Robinson, Tyrone, Tracy, Isiah, Pacheco, James Conner. Lots of guys there as well. Some of the best wide receivers on the roster: my guy Justin Jefferson, bdge, who I drafted as a rookie, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, Lad McConkey, Rashee Rice, Jalen Waddle, Luther Burden. Lots of good players there as well. My guy Brandon Ayuk, RIP, sitting there at the bottom of the roster as well. And then at the tight end position, guys like Trey McBride, Mark Andrews. Yeah, this team's pretty damn stacked. I'm not gonna lie. We have multiple firsts next year, multiple seconds next year. We should be built to basically be a super team type of contender for the next 2, 3, 4 years, hopefully, as long as I'm managing this roster properly. So yeah, basically I just want to show you guys the roster, and I'm not not doing that, you know, to be braggadocious or kind of just tell you guys how good of the roster this is, but I'm really just doing it to provide the context for you guys to see how strong this roster is and why I made the moves that I made later in this video here today. So just wanted to show that to you just so you guys had the team. But let's go back over here because I wanted to show you guys the draft capital that we came into the 2025 rookie draft with, or came into this offseason with. We went into 2025 with 8 total draft picks. We had 1 first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, a 4th and 4 fifth-round picks. Like I said, 10-man league. We're picking about 50 players in these rookie drafts, so you guys can see those picks that we had on the screen. Picking at the 110, picking at the 2-1, the 2-8, the 4-10, the 5-3, 5-4, 5-6, and 5-10, basically in the top 50 of players there. So that's kind of the draft capital that we came into this league with in 2025 and what we went into the 2025 rookie draft with. Now, heading into the 2025 rookie draft, I knew I had too many picks on the roster and I didn't have enough bench and taxi space. You guys saw the roster is very deep, so I didn't really want to cut anybody. So I knew I had to trade away at least 1 pick, probably to avoid drafting some extra players that I couldn't roster and waste those draft picks because you're going to have to make cuts anyways. So I knew I had to move a couple picks. One of the moves that I made right before the draft was moving my 506 into 2026 for some extra roster space, just not being able to use the pick this year, but use it next year, basically just push it down the line. But basically I traded this 2025 506 for 2 2026 5th-round picks. Ultimately that 506 turns into a guy like Harold Fannin Jr., so not really too upset about losing him. Just push the pick down the line, gain some extra dart throws in the upcoming year. Can keep doing that, you know, year after year after year, and then you can accumulate, you know, some more and more draft picks. I found that people like to, you know, trade multiple of a year out's picks to come up and make a pick this year, especially in this league. So I just was willing to do that. Small move, but I figured I'd give you guys some context because actually going into that rookie draft, I did not have the 506. I pushed it down the line for a couple of 2026 5th-round picks. So that takes us to this rookie draft that we had here in this league. Really, you know, my first pick was going to be sitting there at that 110. The draft kind of unfolded as expected. You know, my top 8 prospects that I've talked about, my tiers 1 through 3 in my prospect rankings, were all taken by the 109. Guys like Cam Ward, Hunter, Hampton, McMillan, Henderson, Judkins, Egbuka, all of these guys come off the board. I've been holding on to that 110 just in the hopes that an off chance that somebody might fall in those tiers of players for me. I was praying that I could maybe get an Egbuka at 110, maybe get a Judkins at 110, but obviously after the NFL draft and the way that the draft capital landed, that just didn't work out for us. So the 109, my guy Parker, he ends up taking RJ Harvey, and my original plan at the 110 was going to be taking one of those guys that's falling, but I knew I had a need potentially at running back on this roster, so I wanted to try and grab a running back. That was my biggest need on the roster, at least that I felt like at the time. So obviously by the time that I'm sitting here on the clock at the 110, we've had 5 running backs come off the board in Genty, Hampton, Henderson, Judkins, and Harvey, and that had kind of been my top 5 guys in my rankings, and that pushed me out into a predicament where I had to either reach for a player in my tier 5 of prospects for a running back in Caleb Johnson to kind of reach for the positional need, or I could sit here and draft a player in my tier 4 of prospects, which you guys can see on the screen was going to be guys like Tyler Warren, Jackson Dart, Colston Loveland, and a guy like Matthew Golden. So rather than reaching for Caleb Johnson, I chose to kind of explore some trade options, see what would happen if I wanted to move back or maybe move out of the pick entirely. And I started targeting some veteran running backs to maybe help with some immediate production, just because I know that this is a win now team and I'm in a window where I need some fantasy football points right now to try and capture as many championships as I possibly can. So I started looking at those veteran options. Now, ultimately that came and resulted into this trade, which is the second trade that we made here, turning my 110 into Josh Jacobs. Basically what happens here is he turns Josh Jacobs into Matthew Golden. This is the same guy who drafted RJ Harvey at the 109, so he must have felt like he got the running back that he needed. And Harvey got a little bit younger, wanted the wide receiver, felt like he could move Jacobs for a wide receiver replacement, so he kind of did that by fixing his team there. At least that's what he felt like. And I turned my 110 into Josh Jacobs, avoiding that reach to Caleb Johnson and addressing a real need with a guy who can be an immediate producer for my fantasy football team right now today. Jacobs, he's coming off of a huge year. I feel like he's a little bit of an undervalued asset at the moment. He played 62% of the snaps for the Packers last year, totaled nearly 1,700 total yards, 16 touchdowns, finishes the RB6 in our league specific scoring. I think he's the perfect fit for my win now roster, and he joins a team here with Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor in my running back room to kind of be that RB3 on the roster. And already as a bonus, I had Marshawn Lloyd on the roster that I drafted in the 3rd round of last year's rookie draft, so it kind of gives me a built-in handcuff potentially for Josh Jacobs if anything happens to him. Maybe Lloyd is the handcuff that they drafted behind him, so So I kind of had that insurance already built in on my roster. So I felt like this was a pretty good move for me at the 110. So instead of taking that pick, I ended up taking the veteran running back here to bolster my roster. Now, as you guys saw before, I was back to back. I had the 201 as well. So we were kind of in the same predicament sitting here at the 201. It's the same mindset as before for me. I wanted to move back within the tier or trade out of the pick entirely, the same way that I did with the first one. The process hadn't really changed. So I put this pick on the trade block in my league chat. And while I was waiting for offers, I also played with the potential other strategy just in case nobody wanted the pick and I had to sit and make the pick. I started exploring some trade options for Mark Andrews in that 202 to 205 range, hoping that maybe Illuminati D, Sugar, maybe a guy like Sugar here at the 205, they'd give me one of those picks for Mark Andrews. And then if no trade for that 201 materialized, I could just draft Tyler Warren, who was my best player on the board. He would be my tight end 2 behind Trey McBride. I could move forward with McBride and Tyler Warren, and then I could just make that pick if nobody wanted the 201. And then I would use the draft pick that I got in that Mark Andrews trade to maybe re-roll that into a different player like Luther Burden, Caleb Johnson, Jackson Dart, whoever was going to fall in this range. So that's kind of what I started playing with, but ultimately the goal was to trade 201 and move it back. So a couple managers, they reach out to me, they start asking who I was targeting with this pick if I was going to be forced to sit and pick. I told them Tyler Warren, which was true, hoping that it might push somebody to make a trade. That conversation led to a trade offer landing in my inbox, and this is the trade that I ended up accepting. You can see Tyson sent that offer to me, I accept it, and that comes to trade number 3. I move back, I get the move back that I wanted, moving that 201 back 3 spots to the 204, and in that trade, I also swapped Tyrone Tracy for Isiah Pacheco. Now, I'd been trying to sell Tyrone Tracy pre-NFL draft. I was concerned that he was going to get some competition, which he did get some competition in the NFL draft. So meanwhile, I also viewed Pacheco as a post-draft winner. The Chiefs, they really didn't add any serious running back competition until the 7th round where they got Brashard Smith. And even though they added a guy in the 7th round, I still think Pacheco is a winner because he's probably going to see a pretty big workload here this year for the Chiefs. So in my opinion, I'm upgrading Tracy to Pacheco, and it was worth it for me to kind of do that minor move back. Even though the talent gap between the tiers, this is probably going to put me between tier 4 and tier 5. Maybe a guy from tier 4 falls for me in my prospect rankings, but if none of them fall, I'm looking at the top of tier 5. The talent gap isn't significant. I think the main reason why there was that tier gap for me in my rankings is because of the draft capital. So I was willing to gamble and take the risk there just to see what happened if I moved back these couple of slots, and this is the trade that I ended up taking. So obviously me telling Tyson I was going to draft Tyler Warren worked. He comes up, he drafts Tyler Warren at the 201. Colston Loveland goes at the 202, which was in my tier 4. Jackson Dart at the 203, which was in my tier 4. Now I'm sitting here at the top of my tier 5 where I have Luther Burden, Caleb Johnson, and Jaden Higgins, and I decided that I wanted to make this pick. We're sitting at the top of that new tier. Typically, I don't like picking at the top of the tier. I like trading back and picking at the end of the tier, kind of letting the league decide who I'm going to get. But I said, fuck it, I'm going to take the pick here. I want to make the player. I've already addressed some needs in this draft where I felt like I needed some running backs. I've added Josh Jacobs and I've added Pacheco already. All it did was cost me my 110 and a move back in the early 2nd round. So I had some more flexibility. I didn't have to force a positional need. So here's where I decided to draft Luther Burden. He was my best player available in my rankings. I had him ranked 14th overall. This is the 14th pick in the draft. That's where we take him. I think this is a player who has an elite analytical profile. Obviously, people are a little bit concerned about that 2024 season, but I think I'm going to bet on him and his elite upside in this Ben Johnson offense here in Chicago. And for what it's worth, I didn't have anybody on this offense yet that was in this Bears offense. I think that Bears offense should take a significant step forward this year. At least that's my hope with Caleb Williams, and hopefully my Caleb Williams shares in dynasty leagues. I think they take a step forward. I wanted a little bit of a share of it here in this league, and like I said, it worked out perfectly because Burden, the top of my tier 5 players, my best player available, and I ended up selecting him over Caleb Johnson despite debating Caleb Johnson at the 110 and the 201 because of positional need. Felt like I solved those with those trades. So Luther Burden is the pick here at 204. Now moving down the draft board, we were going to be back up on the clock again at 208. So Caleb Johnson goes, Jaden Higgins goes. That's my tier 5, putting us at the top of tier 6. You guys know what I said about being at the top of the tier. Mason Taylor comes off at the 207. I felt like that was a reach. He is not in my tier 6 of players. He's in my tier 7. So I felt like it was a reach. 208. One of my original picks coming into this draft. By this point, like I said, those tier 5 guys are off the board. Mason Taylor's off the board. And I'm sitting here at the top of tier 6 looking at a whole grouping of guys here in Trey Harris, Cam Scatabo, Brashel Tootin, Jack Best, Jalen Milrow. And I'm deciding, you know what? Let the league decide who I want because I want to move back. And then I got a message from a league mate saying that he wanted to move up to draft Shedeur Sanders because he felt like Shedeur Sanders was falling in this draft and he wanted to take the shot on him. Maybe a little bit of pre-draft bias there. But at the end of the day, I was willing to move back and trade back just to let him come up and get Shedeur Sanders, because it also allowed me to know that him moving up, he was not going to take one of the tier 6 players in my tier, meaning there's a chance that they fall even further back for me. So I'm willing to gamble. So ultimately he sends over this trade offer. Again, it's Tyson. He's trying to move up and down throughout this draft all day long. Sends this offer to me. I accept it. This is the deal that we worked out. And it's actually a little bit funny because I moved back and I get Tyrone Tracy thrown in, who I had just given him. It's the same manager as before, obviously. So we agreed that I would move back 5 spots from my 208. I'd go to the 303, and in return, I basically get Tyrone Tracy thrown back onto my roster for that 410 that I ended up having to give him. So I felt like this is probably risky. I'm going to potentially lose out on my top 3 targets there in Trey Harris, Scatabo, Tootin. Those are really the guys that I was looking to grab with that pick, and moving back 5 spots, even though Shedeur Sanders is going to go at that 208, that's 4 picks, 3 guys I'm looking at. There's a chance that I miss on those guys, and I figured, you know what, Tracy being involved this year, even though I was trying to sell him pre-draft, there's a price for every single player, and the 410 swap here, it's probably too cheap. So I'll just take Tyrone Tracy, hope he's involved a little bit in the receiving game. It's hope that it's a split between him and Cam Scatabo, and maybe in the chance Scatabo falls, I can just secure the backfield there at the 303. But I knew there was a gamble, I knew there was a risk, so I think it's just worth the gamble here. Like I said, the price on Tracy, despite trying to sell him in the offseason, felt too cheap with him just asking to get the 410 back with that 5-spot move back. So that's the move that I ended up making here instead of picking at the 208. So now we just keep moving down the draft board. 208 goes Sanders, Harris goes, who I was looking at, Milroe goes, who's in that tier for me, and then unfortunately I'm sitting here at the 303. Scatabo and Tootin, the last 2 guys that I was looking at there, Harris, Scatabo, and Tootin, they all come off the board. So I gambled, I took the risk, it didn't pay off. We're sitting here on the clock at 303. Like I said, those guys come off the board. Jack Besh was the last player in my tier 6 with Milroe coming off, so really Jack Besh is sitting here as the best player available. I just also kind of knew that, like I said earlier, I came into this draft with not a lot of roster space, and I knew I needed to create some space. Wasn't necessarily sure. I'm sure I could have taken the time to add up, you know, how much roster space I actually had and how many picks I had made up to this point and who I added via trade. But at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I just can't get myself to click Jack Besh here, and I don't even know if I have the roster space to click Jack Besh here. So I decided I would at least just shop this pick for a future 2nd round pick. So what I do is I go and I start sending offers to every manager in this league. 303 for a 26 second, and I do it to every single manager that has a 2026 second, and lucky me, somebody bites. So I end up moving that 303 for a 2026 second to Ragnar. Ultimately, now that I look at this, I love it even more because I think this is a team that has been competitive over the last couple of years, but their roster is really aging pretty rapidly. I think they lack a lot of depth, and even though he's a good manager and I think he can fix it, if he faces an injury this year or a couple of injuries, I think this second could very well end up as an early or a mid 2nd round pick next year. So it does have the potential to move up pretty early into that 2nd round if he deals with some variance and he deals with some injuries. So to me, this was a no-brainer trade. You know, I moved that 3rd round pick for potentially an early to mid 2nd round pick next year, given that I already know I have a lack of roster space and I don't know how many more rookies I can add to this roster, knowing I also have a handful of 5th round picks here later in the draft. And so he ends up moving up to the 303 and takes Brashard Smith, who, you know, is a little bit annoying because he was one of my favorite targets to target later in the 4th and 5th rounds of drafts, and I had just picked up Isiah Pacheco, so this kind of might have made a little bit of sense here with Pacheco on the roster because you get Brashard Smith and maybe get a handcuff here if anything crazy happens. But ultimately, you know, I'm not going to worry too much. Like I said, he was a Chiefs fan, he wanted to come up, he wanted to reach, and you know what, I'll trust him because he said Isiah Pacheco was going to be good when I was in on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So hey, if he says Brashard Smith's here, maybe he got one over on me. I don't know, we'll see what happens. But he ends up coming for the 303. I move and get the 26 seconds, so I don't pick in the 3rd round. So the draft continues to move down and down and down. You guys see we ended up not having that 3rd round pick. Jack Besh actually falled all the way to the 310, so that was kind of crazy to me because I had him as my best player available here at the 303, but we had a lot of guys come off the board. In the 4th round, I didn't have any picks either, so you know, wasn't going to be able to grab some of those guys. I did have that 410 earlier, but like I said, it was thrown in for the Tyrone Tracy deal, and ultimately didn't have that pick. So really all that I had left in my little war chest of draft picks here on this contending roster was the 503 503, the 504, and the 510. And you know what? I said, God damn it, I'm going to make all of these picks. Nobody's going to trade me for these 5th round picks. I already tried to make the 5th round pick before the draft that I did successfully do, but I had liked holding on to a couple of these 4th and 5th round picks in this year's draft class because I felt like there was a lot of running back value in a deep running back class. And I just wanted to get a couple guys to throw into my taxi squad just to see what would happen as potential lottery tickets. So the 503 here, I end up drafting Jarquez Hunter. I think he has a really strong analytic profile. I think he got decent draft capital to go there to the Rams. And this is a player that I viewed as a lottery ticket as well. Obviously, Kyren Williams looking for a contract extension. Maybe he doesn't get it. Maybe Hunter can beat out Corum as the RB2. I don't know. Lots of variants that can happen, but I just wanted to buy into that Rams offense, and they talked very highly of Hunter. Plus, I also viewed Hunter as a value because he was the 31st overall player in my rankings, and I got him here as the 43rd overall player in the draft. So I got about a 12 spot discount on Jarquez Hunter based on my draft prospect rankings after the NFL draft. So going to the 504, you know, we're up again back to back. I take DJ Giddens, good athletic profile, good speed scores, potentially a Jonathan Taylor handcuff who I already have on the roster. And just like Jarquez Hunter, had him as the 33rd overall player in my rankings, got him as the 44th overall player. So again, another value pick for me here just based off of my rankings. So I was pretty happy to add Hunter and Giddens to the taxi squad there with those picks. And then moving down the board all the way to that 510, that's where we were with our last pick from our original picks from our championship run. I ended up taking Jacory Krosky-Merritt. I talked about him a lot in a video just earlier this week, highlighted him, talked about why I like him so much and why I think that there's some potential opportunity here in Washington. But I selected him at the 510 because I wanted to keep him off of waivers. I liked his potential in Washington. I think it's a weak depth chart, and I didn't want to have to go bid for him crazy. Little did I know that JCM would be somebody that basically nobody in my league wanted on the waiver wire. I basically ended up picking him up everywhere where I didn't draft him. So he was just a player that my leagues were sleeping on, and maybe the community is sleeping on, and I liked. So I decided to take him at the 510 instead of picking him up off of waivers. But he was the last pick for me there in this draft. So, you know, I go into that rookie draft, I make those selections, I make those trades, and ultimately going in with the 8 picks, I used 4 of those picks on players like Luther Burden and those taxi squad running backs that we talked about earlier in Hunter, JCM, and Giddens. And through the trades and the moves that we made, we also added 4 veterans to those 4 rookies with those picks. We had Josh Jacobs, Isiah Pacheco, Tyrone Tracy, and a future 2nd round pick that hopefully will be early to mid next year if that team does have some variance in the injury department. But you know, going into that draft, having those 8 picks, I didn't have to use them all on rookies. I knew I didn't have to use them all on rookies, and I knew that on the clock, those picks would have the most value. So I think I came out pretty good. You guys let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you like the idea that I traded some of those picks for some veteran players and shored up that running back position on this super team to potentially run it back in 2025 and 2026 and hopefully 2027? Or do you think because I already had the players on the roster, I should have said fuck it and just drafted the rookies? I feel like I like the production, the proven production, but who knows? We already know what those players are. We don't know what the rookies are. Maybe the rookies can be better. Maybe they're worse. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments down below. But there you go. That is how I used all of my rookie picks here on this contending roster, trying to run it back. I'm going to do the rebuilding roster next week. It's going to be on Monday, so make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. That way you guys can see how I use those picks. I think I had like 15 picks on that one rebuilding roster, so there's going to be a lot of them that we talk about. I used a lot of them to actually pick rookies, so we'll talk about that as well. Like I said, make sure you're subscribed. If you liked today's video, you found it entertaining, actionable, informative, any of those things, you just like it, make sure you hit the like button for me. It is the best free way to support this channel. And last but not least, make sure you go join our free Discord. I mentioned it at the beginning of the video. Y'all voted for 2 videos. If you want to vote on future video ideas, or you want to be in our Dynasty trade review show, or you want to draft in some mock drafts with us, or whatever it may be, you just want to join a community of super dope people that want to talk fantasy football with you 24/7, 365, go join that free Discord. It is linked in the description. Like I said, it's free to join, so there is no risk in doing that. But with all of that out of the way, I have nothing else for you guys today, so I will see you on our next episode. But until then, peace out.